Hello, my beautiful friends and fellow space blobs, earth blobs, sparkly blobs, all the blobs. If there was ever a new moon that was made for those of us who really connect with that sense of blobness, this is the new moon. And that's not to say if you have another form that you like to take on, that you like to describe yourself as, by all means. I'm here for all the different forms that we all take and envision. But I do know that for me, so far this calendar year, I have been feeling so much joy, really embracing my blobness, really letting it become more central to my day-to-day life. For so long, I had shame about this part of myself and was trying to edit it out. And in recent weeks, I've really gotten some really powerful validation and support. And I've been just feeling this freedom of getting to be that and getting to live that. And I think that's so freeing, not only for me, but any of you other blobs out there, to just know that we're in this together and that it's so important that we exist. It's so important that we exist and that we're here and that we're doing beautiful things. And I'm already getting emotional because Aquarius just does this with me. I love this energy so much. The elements of freedom and self-expression and pride and joy and becoming ourselves and allowing ourselves to really be here is just some of my favorite things about Aquarius energy. It always makes me feel so happy whenever I connect with this energy. So let's talk about the Aquarius new moon on February 9th. This new moon heralds in the lunar new year. If you connect a little bit more with maybe that lunar cycle, I know up here in the Northern Hemisphere, it does feel a little bit more like a true new year in some ways because the winter is starting to release a little bit and it's feeling a little bit more like it's possible that there is life beyond hibernation. But this is a really beautiful new moon of sight, of vision, of expression, of playfulness, of creativity, of seeing things from new perspectives, of feeling a sense of softness and warmth as well. And I know there are going to be people sitting here saying, Aquarius is not about softness and warmth. It can be cold. It can be calculating. Don't miss that. But we're going to get into that a little bit as we talk through this beautiful new moon. And as we set ourselves up, I think, to ask some really great questions, to journal, to play, and to just express ourselves during this beautiful moment of the year. This new moon happens on February 9th, and it's going to be the sun and moon conjunct at 20 degrees of Aquarius. This new moon comes after that big, beautiful, bold Leo full moon, which was so powerful. How was your Leo full moon? I hope it was beautiful. And I brought up during that Leo full moon that a lot of the energy there was about looking at the rules that we have within our systems, within ourselves, that tell us we have to be a certain way, we have to do things a certain way, the ways that we can sometimes put really heavy expectations on ourselves, and to break free of those a little bit and dissolve some of those expectations. This new moon is going to build on that. So they're very interlinked, that last full moon and this new moon, and the process of starting to kind of envision what we want, what we're dreaming of, what brings us joy, what is positive feeling in our lives, into how we're envisioning what's coming next. So that's a really nice thing to keep in mind as we work through this. This new moon has one big aspect going on, and that is that it will be squaring Uranus over in Taurus. Once again, our friend Uranus is involved in a moon, which it's been happening a lot over this last, a while. Many months, I feel like Uranus shows up during our moon chats. But I really love this conversation between the new moon in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus, because this brings up fixed sign energy. I think a lot of times we think about fixed sign energy as the big, bold energy, the in your face, like big moments, very bold personality, things that happen in our lives. And that's part of it for sure. But fixed sign energy is also about the consistent hum of something going on behind the scenes over a whole process, over a whole season of life, over a whole creative expression, over a whole lifetime in a way. It's this deep thread. It's like the bass note that holds everything together. So fixed sign energy can really be something that's working subtly and quietly, but consistently and powerfully behind the scenes of all the other things that we're doing, right? And I think what's important when we have a square like this, right? It's because it's having us reflect on what we really want, what we're really pursuing. It's having us take a moment. And for me, this square with all that transformational energy that's like, yeah, what are we going to do? How is this going to change? Is to know that it's not about rushing to the finish line. It's not about rushing to the final project. It's not about getting the end result or forcing ourselves or pushing ourselves. This square actually challenges that shift is about immediate results and emphasizes that time is more abundant than I think we sometimes think about it. That what's really important here is coming back home to center. One of my favorite thinkers, writers, leaders is Martha Beck, and she talks about how we can have these beautiful experiences of having what we really long for in life, but we can only receive them when we're asking from our home address, not from Joe's address over there, not from Stephanie's over there, from our home address. And this square, I think, is just that moment of recognizing what we each want. You know, in my space blobness, I definitely don't want most of the things that I think are often told us that we should want, right? I have no interest in them, even though in past times I will journal about those things and try and get myself to get excited about them. They're not what I want. I have other stranger things that for me are really valuable. So I think this square also reminds us that it's not about how much we're wishing for. It's not about how much we're getting done. It's not about how fast we're getting it done. It's about how much we feel like we have the permission to be with ourselves, with what we actually want. And I think that can be sometimes a little scary, right? To really sit and say, you know, I've been trying to want all of these things. I've been trying to want these elements in my life that maybe I'm living right now, but I just can't. I know that can be really, really vulnerable, but it's also so freeing. And I think this square also reminds us that each little moment is really valuable in that process of finding our home address, of remembering our home address, of bringing it to life. It's each little moment, each dream, each time we vision, each stroke of the brush on the page, each line that we write, each moment we choose to come home to ourselves when we could, you know, let our energy disperse and say yes to something we don't mean to. It's those little moments that really bring us back to our soul song and the hum of who we truly are. Along with that, I just want to mention something because, you know, when we're talking about Uranus, we're talking about Aquarius. I know we've talked about Pluto and Aquarius, who's hanging out way at the beginning of the Aquarius degrees, not anywhere near this new moon, but there's a lot of energy right now and a lot of conversation going on in the internet spirituality world about how you have to change or be dragged. That you have to go through this kind of like stressful, scary process in order to be in the process of changing and becoming more yourself. I want to challenge that very deeply because I think it's a very unhealthy part of the way that astrology can be practiced. Can be. Not always, but can be. You're allowed to take care of your nervous system. You're allowed to choose to connect with your transformational process in your way. We need people who feel safe to be themselves. We need people who feel safe to do their process in their way. That is so important. And I want you to remember that in whatever way you are working with this Aquarius new moon. It doesn't have to be about getting all jangled up. You don't have to go through like a horrible jangling in order to be valid, in order for your transformation to be valid. Of course, each of us is going to have moments like that in our lives. That's like innate to human life. It doesn't matter if we have Uranus doing something or Pluto doing something. That's going to happen, right? But it's not innate to becoming more ourselves necessarily. And I think it's so important to just give yourself that permission and that peace. Let yourself have peace during this Aquarius new moon. Aquarius is so deeply connected to peace, to that humanitarian connectivity, to letting people be who they are without all the old ways of doing stuff that we've been doing for hundreds of years that have not been working. I think part of Aquarian vision is envisioning doing things in a way that works better, that feels better. And I think taking care of our nervous systems, letting ourselves have some joy, having some positive stimulation, whether that's listening to your favorite record or painting or dancing around or just laughing with your best friend, whatever it is, give yourself that. That's more important than anything else. I have one final note before we get into the cards, and that is that while this new moon is happening, we have Jupiter having some conversations. So Jupiter in Taurus is going to be squaring Mercury in Aquarius. Once again, that Taurus Aquarius squaring, and also sextiling Saturn in Pisces. And this brought up some questions that will kind of mirror what we were talking about during that Leo full moon, but I'm just going to put them out here and you can play with them and see how they're feeling. What rules do you have about how you have to feel? How fast you have to be? How good you have to be in order for something to be true, to be real, or to have value? What rules do you have about your process, about allowing yourself to succeed or something, or feel good about something, or to just purely exist here, that are hurting, that have to do with you need to get it done faster. You needed to get it done better. It needed to be harder and scarier, and it can't just be simple and easy sometimes. It has to come with a lot of tolls and a lot of taxes on our system. You know, those kind of messages I think are really interesting to explore. Life isn't always easy, and we have enough challenges as it is. Just living a life, moving through a human life. So where are we expecting things from ourselves in our process that are actually hurting, that don't feel good, that don't feel true? That's where I want to explore. And that's where I think that Jupiter conversation is really interesting. It brings in that Saturn and Pisces energetic of deep faith in ourselves, of deep forgiveness, of deep connection to spirit. And it brings in that Mercury and Aquarius challenge of why are we using our thoughts in certain ways that may or may not be helping us. Let's get into the intuitive tarot part of our conversation, explore together, and just feel through. I think I'm only going to pull maybe one or two messages for this moon. I think it's so important each of us gets to explore this on our own terms. Queen of Pentacles. Oh, I love Queen of Pentacles. That is speaking of self-trust. Yes. Very powerful energy on that front. Let's pull a companion to go with our beautiful Queen of Pentacles. And Four of Swords. Really interesting here. Let's talk through this. I think this will be very empowering for so many of us to just hear this conversation, I hope. The Queen of Pentacles, like I just said, self-trust is so important with Queen of Pentacles. I think one of the things that I love about this archetype and this energy when it shows up is that this is an energy that understands that we will have what we need, we'll have the wisdom we need, we'll have the insight we need as we go through a process. I think sometimes many of us who like to think and prepare and move through life in that way feel like we need to be preparing for a few months from now when we know there's going to be a transition or when we know we're going to have big conversations. And we feel like we need to already know how we're going to handle those things down the line. The Queen of Pentacles is a reminder that that wisdom comes as we take each step. And we can kind of trust ourselves a little bit more in the day that we're in and the process that we're in while we're sitting here in this beautiful new moon energy, this beautiful lunar new year energy that will be floating around, that we can just trust ourselves right where we are. Queen of Pentacles is very intuitive as well. She uses intuition by checking in with herself, going back to that center. It reminds me of what I said about that square, the new moon squaring Uranus and Taurus. That change and transformation and all of that stuff tends to be truer and more sustaining and more consistent when we are finding times and finding ways and finding each of our unique ways of finding our center. All of us are going to have different ways of doing that, whether that's dancing around the apartment, or that's something I do, or walking or journaling or talking to your closest friend, whatever it is. But coming home to center is where so much of our intuition lives. And coming back into listening to the feedback that our body is giving us, and trusting ourselves more, and just building a really deep sense of trust in ourselves is huge for this new moon. And I think there's a really deep simplicity to that we don't often give ourselves, because we feel like it has to be harder, it has to be more complex, it has to go through some kind of ritual in order for it to be real. But it is real, and it's always there waiting for us. I think Four of Swords is actually a really interesting energy to include in this conversation, and I love that it showed up. It's one of my favorite cards. I have nicknamed it the nap card. But fours and tarot are some of my favorite energies, because these are points after we've just maybe had a creative thing pour through, or a shift in life, or something move through, where we rest, we integrate, we understand what we've just done. We take the time to have the wisdom to hear that before we go to the next stages of our journey, before we go to the next thing that we're trying to figure out. I think that's a really important part of this new moon. There is a sense of reflection on what we have moved through. Why it's important, for example, for me, I know if I actually take the time to sit down and think about the last 2 years of my life, I understand how powerful that has been for me in coming into that sense of empowered space blobness. I needed those 2 years to give me that full permission and wildness, however difficult it has been, which it has been very difficult. I needed that. And this is an honoring of what you have created, what you have learned, the wisdom you are taking with you into these forward-facing visions. Those forward-facing visions, the big visionary energy of Aquarius, is possible especially when we really remember all the wisdom we're taking with us that informs the visions moving forward, that informs the way that we are starting to shape how we express ourselves. It's in remembering that, oh yeah, that scenario did not work for me, so I'm not going to replicate it. It's in remembering, oh yeah, now I understand that I have a sensitivity to this thing, and I would like to shift pieces around in my life to focus on allowing myself spaces that don't constantly barrage me, right? There's so many ways that we could play with this energy, but remember that fours are important moments of integration and understanding, so that we can keep moving forward, so that we can keep sustaining that base note of that fixed sign energy that is the long game, that is the process of playing with that long game. I hope you all have a beautiful Aquarius new moon. And if you are interested in exploring tarot with me or want some more support, we are going to be doing a visualization and a journaling process over on Patreon for this new moon, for the Lunar New Year. Also, starting in March, I am going to be walking us through over on Patreon for all my paid members. We're going to be walking through the major arcana together, and I'm going to be teaching my way of teaching and my way of working with it, which is a lot about developing a sense of trust in your intuition, your process. Not so much about creating a perfect guide to tarot, but helping you feel secure and playing with it in a way that is sustainable and good for you and helpful in your nervous system and empowering. So if you are looking for a beautiful journey, I would love to see you over there. It allows me to keep doing this work here and sending out my love to all of you and continue to be here. So I really appreciate that. And of course, if you would like to leave a comment about how this new moon is feeling for you, how you're moving through this energy, or anything that's coming up for you, I'd love to read through your comments. And of course, subscribe if you have not yet. That is a really powerful way to send me a little cosmic hug. Know that I have my space blobs with me. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a beautiful new moon. I will see you very soon for our next conversation. And take care of your beautiful spirits in all their unique forms.